Welcome to the Blue Room Weekly. I'm Dave Downey with Paul McPartlin and Peter McFarlane. As usual, we've done about 4 or 5 podcasts together. That's why I say as usual. But as you know, we mix things up over here on the Blue Room. And we've got plenty to talk about here because we've mostly, we'll put at the start of the agenda is Sean Dyche's podcast. I wish he was on the podcast. Sean Dyche's press conference took place today as we look forward to playing another game at Goodison, finally getting back to Goodison to hopefully get 3 more points to get us further away from this dreaded bottom 3, which seems to going to last us for an eternity in the next 6 weeks or so. The main interesting thing we were just talking about before we hit record on this was the news of Dominic Calvert-Lewin and the potential he has in terms of playing once again. Now, these guys have both certainly looked at the press conference, Sean Dyche's press conference, more than me because I haven't had a chance to today with working. But the bits that I read in the paper up till today and said that he's back in full training, which is obviously a big step up compared to he was back on the grass, which seemed to be the headline last week. I'll come to you first, Paul. Do you see this as big news in the sense that a conventional form of big news? Because we've seen, I think we hit on this last time we done a podcast about the criticism that he's had towards him in not being out and people being very ambiguous about what's going on injury-wise with him and the issues that he's had. How do you feel about this one, that it seems like he's at least edged his way to the squad, given that he's been able to take part in training at Finch Farm?
Yeah, I think you have to see it as a positive, Dave. You know, it's another option, isn't it? You know, it's something else to strengthen the squad, which we kind of desperately need, and it also gives the glimmer of hope that there might just be 1 or 2 goals on the horizon. And I don't know about you and Peter, but since Dyche has arrived, when you see some of the crosses that Dwight McNeil in particular is putting into the box, you're praying that eventually, when Calvert-Lewin gets back, he'll be on the end of one of those crosses. So, yeah, I definitely see it as a step forward for us. I don't see him start on Saturday. I think I'm much more optimistic that he'll be on the bench. But even last 20 minutes, if he needs to come on and make an impact, I think that will just give the crowd a massive boost as well. And I think we kind of see from Dyche, don't we, that he won't risk players who are not 100% fit to start a game. So that's why I don't think he will start with Calvert-Lewin. But I'm hoping that the thinking behind all this has been that they've managed the injury very carefully. They didn't want to put him in games where he was not going to make an impact. For example, it wasn't worth playing him in United last weekend. But this is an absolute must-win game. So if there's one game where you're looking for confidence to come off the bench and make an impact, I think Saturday's the opportunity.
Pete?
Yeah, I think from what Sean Dyche said as well, he's looking forward to having Dominic Calvert-Lewin back in the side. He certainly was talking about his experience and the fact that he's proven at this level as well. While also being complimentary to Ellis Sims and obviously Damari Gray's role in the side, but I don't think he will just jump straight back in. I think again we've got to be careful with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We have seen him sort of rush back before, and it's done him no good whatsoever. So I think it is the right thing that we've taken our time with him this time to really get to the bottom of whatever the issue was. Again, I feel like a lot of it, in terms of the lack of information that's been coming out, has been partly probably to do with just taking the pressure off him a little bit, so that he doesn't feel rushed, and so that the physio department don't feel rushed in getting him back in. I think certainly, like you've touched on as well, in terms of how we've played, as Paul said, since Sean Dyche has come in, every game I've been looking at these crosses that Dwight McNeil's been putting into that box, thinking if we had Dominic Calvert-Lewin, we'd be out of sight here. And it's just, it's so crucial that we get him back and firing for the running for this season. And we know how important goals are. We know that we've been lacking goals throughout the season. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin, if he's firing on all cylinders and we can feed him with chances, we know that he can score goals. But certainly looking at the way Sean Dyche plays, I think this system suits Dominic Calvert-Lewin down to the ground, and I'm really hoping that he's sort of turned the corner now with his injuries as well.
I think it's become a common theme for us when we've been speaking about Calvert-Lewin in the last few weeks, because I kept on using that word dilemma that Sean Dyche has had I think he's got one all around the pitch, really, hasn't he, with the players that we want to see in the starting 11 compared to what we see on the bench. But with Calvert-Lewin, I made the point last week that I think you're getting to a stage now, given what we've got left, 9 games, is it? No, 8 games that we've got left. I think we're in the state now, Pete, where I'll come to you first, Paul, actually, on this. When we're about to put our 11 out for a game, if Calvert-Lewin is even 70, 80% fit compared to everything else we've got in terms of attack, we're reaching a time where you have to risk him, aren't we? We're reaching a time where you have to start him or you have to get him on off the bench as best you can. So again, I think this weekend, having heard the news we have with Calvert-Lewin, is looking at me. I'm looking at it thinking, well, is it time now we start him, or are we still able to hold back? Because if you look what happened at United, we created a golden chance for Ellis Sims, and it's probably defined the issue he has because he's still a young lad and he's still trying to apply his trade, isn't he? But when we get into a situation where he's got to put that away, he absolutely has to put that away for us to get a result at Old Trafford. That doesn't happen, and I'm looking at thinking, well, if that was Calvert-Lewin, he probably bags that, given the record that he's got with us, given what he was growing to be before these horrendous injuries that he's had. So then I look at Fulham and I think, well, at home at Goodison, if you're ticking that box to say that we're at home against any side, starting the most prolific striker we've got, whether he's 100% fit or not, has to be a big decision to make for Sean Dyche. And I'm wondering, obviously I'll come to you first about it, Paul, and Pete can give me his answer as well. Do you risk him, or do you even consider it as a risk given where we are in that league at the moment?
I think undoubtedly, given Calvert-Lewin's injury record this season, it is a risk. So that's why I was kind of believing there's more possibility of him being on the bench and maybe coming on for the last 20, 30 minutes or so. But I agree with you as well, Dave. At some stage, our situation might demand that we have to take a gamble on Calvert-Lewin's fitness. Now, without being disrespectful to Fulham, given the way they've kind of imploded since that FA Cup debacle and Man United a few weeks ago, you'd kind of think that even without Calvert-Lewin, we've got a real good chance to get to win that game. So I don't necessarily see that he has to start this game. And also, it's about being game ready as well. This is about being match fit, which is not quite going to be at that level, which is why I'm thinking Dyche might take the decision to bring him off the bench rather than starting him. But on the other hand, if he was to start the game at last 60, 70 minutes before he went off, and then Sims comes on as another substitute, I'd be equally happy to see that as well. Fortunately, that's the manager's decision, not mine. But either way, with Calvert-Lewin starting or with Calvert-Lewin not starting, I just think this is a real good opportunity to get 3 points in the bag and move us and start our climb away from the bottom 3, which we're all desperately hoping will happen in the next few home games. So looking at our fixtures coming up, we've got Palace away, we've got Leicester away. They're kind of 2 games where you think a fully fit Calvert-Lewin is going to be a massive asset to it. So I'm sure Dyche will make the right decision. I don't think he's going to gamble on starting him, but if he comes off the bench and gets a goal for us or creates a chance, then that'll do me.
I think as well, Pete, taking into account what Paul said there, I mean, you look at that fixture list, and the way I'm staring at now, I've split these last 8 into 2 groups of 4, really. So Fulham, Palace, Newcastle at home, Leicester away. When I look at the games after that, the double header that we had was the double header of games. We have Brighton away, City at home. I can't help but look at this thinking that these next 4,
yeah,
we've got to take at least 9, I think, to stay up here, because Brighton away, they're absolutely flying. They're one of the best sides I've seen all season. I think they've been exceptional. You got City at home, no need to say anything more about that. Wolves away, and then Bournemouth. If we're still in it by the time we get to Wolves away, then I think that's probably something we've done well. I think that we'll get into that situation where and look, I mean, that's me saying, I think, really heavy sort of comment, me saying that I think we might be down if we don't get at least 9 or 10 from these next 4. But when I see what Palace did, I can't believe what Roy Hodgson's done there already, because they absolutely hammered Leeds, didn't they, the other day?
Yeah.
you look at the results that are happening around us. I mean, it's starting to look more and more to me like it's us or Leicester, possibly Bournemouth. I think Forest are going to go. I think Southampton are already gone. Those two, and then one of those sides that I've just mentioned there. So this against Fulham is, I mean, it goes without saying, really, doesn't it? But this is astronomical compared to everything else we played this season.
It is, and you're right. These next 4 games are the ones that define our season. I'd said the same way I said that the United loss doesn't define our season last week when we were on. This Fulham game really does, and the next 4 games really do. If we're going to get out of this mess, it's all about these fixtures, and I think that's probably, sort of going back to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think that's probably why, when we looked at the fixture list with those 3 games against Chelsea, Spurs, and United, I think knowing how the games would probably pan out in terms of possession wise, in terms of the type of chances you're going to have, I think that was probably a big reason why he wasn't rushed back in any sooner, and he wasn't risked for those games. They wanted to give him a few extra weeks to make sure he was up to speed. But certainly the next 4 games are massive for us, absolutely huge, and I'm fully expecting Dominic Calvert-Lewin to play a major role in them. I don't think he'll start at the weekend, but I do think he will come on and hopefully make an impact. But certainly when you look at the following games, Palace away, Newcastle at home, Leicester away, those 3 games are just, season defining. So yeah, all we can do is hope and back the team and try and get behind them. Certainly this Saturday is as big for me as the likes of Palace last season in terms of what the support need to do, what we need to do to back that team. We can't go in there nervy. We can't go in there, with the jitters, and we can't go in there and not sing and support and chant and make it a bear pit for the opposition players. This game is huge, as are the following 3. In fact, every game from now till the end of the season. But yeah, I'm just hoping against hope that we can, see Dominic Calvert-Lewin come back into the fold and make a major impact.
Selection-wise, Pete, so I keep on saying you're getting your names crossed all the time. You two sound exactly the same. Paul first. Looking at the 11 that we might well put out against Fulham, there was lots of talk that Chambers is going to be out. A lot of people I was speaking to today on social there with the Blue Room have been saying that they want to see Godfrey go on to the other side, given he was let's be honest, he was appalling against Man United last week. I thought that was one of the worst performances I've ever seen from him. Look, it's not naturally his position. I think that's a bit of an asterisk you need to put next to his name, because we've seen him play in so many different back 4 positions for us, haven't we? But naturally he's going to be a centre back. Putting him to right back over Coleman, people have said that pretty much is set in stone. It needs to be that way if Seamus is unfit. But Patterson's on his way back as well, isn't he? He's been back in training. He made a couple of appearances or gone off the bench when he's playing for Scotland in the last couple of weeks during the international break. What's your thoughts on that area, and what would you do about it?
Well, it was quite intriguing to listen to Dyche's press conference today, because he was asked that same question about Nathan Patterson stepping up to fill Seamus Coleman's position. And he was very reluctant to go down that route. He was kind of focusing on the fact that, Patterson hasn't really played many games. He's not quite at the level he needs to be at this stage. So I would guess the smart money is going to be on Ben Godfrey starting at right back. And apart from Nathan Patterson, there's no really other obvious alternative to play at right back. And I agree, Saturday, Ben Godfrey probably his worst performance in an Everton shares. And I think there's a debate to be had about whether he's ever fully recovered from that injury he received at the start of the season. But in terms of his pace, we need a pacey fullback. His pace gets him out of problems sometimes, and that is a definite asset for him. So, yeah, I would definitely, I think, given that Seamus is highly unlikely to play, I can definitely see Ben Godfrey starting that position, and then maybe Nathan Patterson being given maybe 10, 15 minutes towards the end. I don't really see any other way forward than that. And given the concern about Godfrey's performance last Saturday, it seems to me that he's bringing Mykolenko back now he's recovered from his bout of sickness, stroke, injury seems an obvious move, because he definitely. I thought we improved as a team in the second half when Mykolenko came back onto the pitch and took Godfrey's place, and I don't think Fulham are the most. They're not the most tighter defences, and I think we can definitely use the flanks in this game to create opportunities going forward. So I can definitely see Mykolenko starting as well, with Godfrey on the right-hand side. And I think we see with Sean Dyche, he's not one for making a change unless he feels he has to. So apart from that one, I don't see any other major. I don't see any other major shifting of positions, possibly. With the exception of, I can see him going with Damari Gray rather than Ellis Sims up front.
Do you agree with that? Because that that again is one of the other main dilemmas that Dyche has got, given that he gave Sims his opportunity. I'm not saying he let us down against Man United because it was such a difficult game for us, but regardless of whether we stay up or go down, that image of that chance that he has, that he drags across David De Gea, where he could have put us 1-0 up, I think will stick in my mind for quite some time.
Yeah, I think the flip side of that is that Ellis Sims will be hungry and raring to go and wanting to get another chance like that against Fulham in front of the Goodison Park crowd. He's obviously yet to score in front, at Goodison Park for the first team, so he's going to be chomping at the bit to get out there and look to prove himself. I think in terms of formations and everything else, I think that if you are going to bring Dominic Calvert-Lewin into the fold, I don't think they want to be bringing him on and shifting things around too much when he does come on. So I think he will start with Ellis Sims. What he does in the midfield, actually, to be fair, is the thing that I'm kind of unsure of, because if you were to take Ellis Sims out, obviously then there's a discussion about who comes into the midfield, because I think looking at the Manchester United game, certainly in the first half, I think we looked a little bit all over the place. We were obviously missing Doucouré, running his legs, his press. And I think that's a position that where we came unstuck, and it gave Manchester United so much freedom to just spread the ball around at will, which again didn't help the likes of Ben Godfrey with that ball over the top that constantly caught him out. So I think that's probably something that Sean Dyche will be considering as well. I think Godfrey will be coming in at right backs. Again, going off what, following on from what Paul said, then the press conference, Dyche was very sort of non-committal when it came to Nathan Patterson. He seemed to suggest that he wasn't quite ready. So yeah, I think it will be Godfrey and Mykolenko. But again, it's what happens there in terms of that midfield, and whether Dyche will want to revert back to his usual formation, have Damari Gray up front on his own, and maybe we might see James Garner or Tom Davies coming to that midfield role. I mean, I was sort of advocating for playing Amadou Onana a little bit further up against Manchester United. I thought that would be what we would go for, just because he can offer that energy in that final third and that press, and he's obviously he's one of the players who you'd expect in the final third to be able to get on the ball, and I'd hope that he might be able to almost be let off the leash a little bit and show a bit more influence, because I think a lot of he's come under some criticism recently in terms of his influence on the game. I think if you were to play him a little bit further forward and just ask him to play that role that Doucouré plays so well in terms of that press, I think we could potentially unlock another level to Amadou Onana as well, because obviously, I mean, in terms of his skill set, he's so highly thought of. At such a young age, he was given the captain's armband for Belgium the other week when De Bruyne came off. So he's obviously such a talent. But I think it's almost like a case of trying to unlock that talent. But though, I mean, one thing for certain is that this game is huge for us, but Fulham can't be underestimated in terms of how good a season they've had. Obviously, Mitrovic is going to be a huge loss for them, and he will be from now till the end of the season. I think Willian's back, isn't he? I know he was suspended as well.
He is PC. He played in the last game.
Yeah, he's a player who he always seems to terrorise Everton throughout the years. Doesn't matter how bad he's playing as well. He always seems to just turn up against Everton. I've seen him tear us apart time and time again. So he's going to be one to, regardless of his age. I think Willian is still a dangerous player and the type of player who could cause us damage. So we've got to keep an eye on him. and on that note as well, it's not necessarily a bad thing if we have two more defensive-minded fullbacks as well in terms of Ben Godfrey and Mikalenko, because I think that a lot of Fulham's, certainly without Mitrovic in the middle, I think a lot of Fulham's attacking threat will be coming from wide areas with the overlap as well from their fullbacks. So I think it's not necessarily a bad thing if we do have that like ultra defensive back four. But again, for me, the big issue is what we do in the midfield and how we go about that. Because I want to see certainly a more dominating, a more dominating game from our midfielders. So yeah, whether that's Tom Davies or James Garner to potentially come in, either or, that could be a way forward.
I think there's a danger here as well, Paul. Certainly what I've seen from fans on social and what people have said to me, friends, etc., have said about, this should be the game that it really turns us around in regards to getting us much more momentum going into these final few games of the season. And I've seen that almost to take an assumption here against a Fulham side that have been brilliant so far this season. I think they've lost the last few games, but also I think since the Mitrovic issue when he was at Old Trafford and he's got this ban for the amount of games he's got for them, does that make things a lot easier for us? I think that's the most dangerous situation, is it, when you start assuming what's going to go on, what they're going to start playing. The other elephant in the room as well, Paul, is that we're facing up against our former manager for the first time since he left. Look, he'll have plenty of reason to be looking at why he wants to put Everton to the mill. Certainly when he sees anybody from, well, probably not from the director's box, because they seem to be absent still, don't they? But with Marco Silva coming back as well, there's plenty in the mire, isn't there, really, in this one? With Mitrovic not on the pitch, though, I mean, you have to admit that this is completely different Fulham that come to us, but I'm not necessarily thinking that that's making it any easier.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dave. I agree that there's been a concerning amount of optimism about our possibilities in this game as well. There seems to be a view out there that Fulham are there for the taking, and I agree with what you and Peter said. I know this is a really good Fulham team with a good manager who, arguably, when it's as good as a part, maybe should have been given longer in the post to turn things around. I think as well that their current run of form is definitely linked to that kind of a catastrophe that happened in the cup game in Man United. The loss of Mitrovic is a big loss, but they've got some good backup there as well. They've got Vinicius, who they brought in from Tottenham Hotspur, who's a good forward. On the bench, got Harry Wilson, ex-Liverpool, so that's always a worry as well. So they have got goal-scoring possibilities. You've got Dan James, who they brought from Leeds United, who's always been a bit of a tricky winger, though quite often not the end product.
Lightning quick, though, isn't he, Paul, as well?
Lightning quick, and you kind of wonder, depending on which flank he operates on, whether he could cause problems there as well. I look at our Fulham team as well, and I used to go watch. I watched Wigan Athletic a few times with Everton on playing, and I saw Anthony Robinson with them about 2-3 seasons ago. And I was really impressed with Anthony Robinson. I was wondering why we let him go. I've been quite impressed with Anthony Robinson this season going forward, but not defensively. And I think that's something we have to play upon as well. And I kind of forgot as well that Shane Duffy is at Fulham now as well. Yeah. And the last thing he does is a nightmare scenario where he comes on in the last 4 or 5 minutes and gets ahead of him.
Paul, you're just telling everybody here that it's all set. You've set the scene for this and what's going to happen.
I've got my fingers crossed while I'm saying this, by the way, Dave. I mean, I would say, I think as you and Peter have indicated there are certain games you look at, and you mentioned that we've got 4 games, Dave, where we've got to get a certain number of points. If we don't get 3 points against Fulham, that I do start to become a lot more concerned about how our season is going to end up. And also as well, I agree that I think in this game, and I agree with what Peter said about the idea of Onana pushing forward and maybe for the Mulder the Corey role. This has to be a game where, we've got to do better than just a 1-0 win. I think, let's try and get 2 goals for a change of hope. Let's make us some inroads into our goal difference, because it could still be a scenario where on the last day of the season, it might be goal difference, it's really goal difference on our part that actually keeps us up. I hope it doesn't come to that, but that's something else we have to bear in mind as well. But I think the loss of Mitrovic turns the game in our favour. We're at home, as Peter mentioned, passionate crowd. Everyone's got to be up for the game. Let's make it a bear pit. Let's make it an intimidating match here. Let's go at them from the start. And if we can kick off with Dwight McNeil scored after 34 seconds again, that'll be absolutely brilliant.
Just looking at Fulham's run results there, Pete, and just to add some of the things that Paul was saying there, that could be a dreadful thing to say given who we're playing and the sort of game that we're playing against the side that's had a poor run and the best player, the striker, is not going to be playing against us. I'll add this to the mill. Fulham have lost their 5 games. When the FA Cup included and 4 Premier League games included to that. Before that, they'd won they were unbeaten in the last 7 before that. So they're very streaky when it comes to these sort of runs. I mean, when you get to the stage of Fulham are this season, where they've probably got an outside chance of qualifying for a Europa Conference, Europa League, something like that, if they go on a decent run towards the end of the season. To me, that feels quite dangerous. And Paul mentioned some of the players there that they could put in. Quick players terrify me with our team because I don't think we're quick in the slightest. And that's why I think if they were to put someone like Dan James on, it wouldn't be against the one thing that Ben Godfrey's got going for him is really strong pace. Do these fear you, Fulham?
I think again you've got to be fearful. In a sense, you've got to have that like fear of failure to push you on to go for the win, because you can't be complacent, certainly not in this league. And Fulham, regardless of results, recent results, they do have quality. That they've obviously come up from the Championship, they've hit the ground running, they've had some bad results, but at the same time they're more than capable of coming to Goodison Park and putting on a performance. I mean, it's sort of thinking back to even like the Aston Villa game. Fulham are a far better side than Aston Villa. And Aston Villa, obviously beat us. We should have been out of sight in that game, but we didn't get the result that we wanted. So this is why I keep saying about like this game is huge. This game is massive for us, and it's we need every single ounce of extra pressure we can get out of that crowd, out of that Goodison crowd, to try and put that onto Fulham. We always say about like winning is a good habit to get into, but losing is also a habit you can get into. So I'm hoping that Fulham will come to Goodison Park and be fearful. Like Paul said, if we can get an early goal, that would be the ideal scenario for me, because it would mean that Fulham would have to come out to try and go at us, which might leave things open for us to then expose that. But again, it's just I mean, looking at Fulham's fixtures as well, they've got a huge say in what happens between now and the end of the season. They're playing Leeds, they're playing Leicester at home, they're playing Southampton away, they're playing Palace probably out of it now, but they've got some fixtures coming up which could really define our season. I'm hoping that definition of our season gets missed for this weekend, and that they can go on a great run afterwards. But yeah, let's just hope that, as I say, it's a tricky one. It's by no means a given, put it that way. I'm not taking this as a given 3 points, and I think we need to be concentrating here, and that goes for the players and the supporters. We need to really give it everything on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, going back to that thing I mentioned at the start to both of you in regards to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, just looking again at the league table, which I seem to do every single day. The goals we've scored is pitiful, really, isn't it? We've scored 23 goals in 30 games. We've got the lowest goal scorers in the entire division, which I think many people refer to as why we're down there. It's almost infamous now, isn't it? Something that will always stick to my mind, certainly, and probably everybody else's. When Farhad Moshiri was saying those things about we will go and get a striker on the final day of the transfer window in January, that sticks in my mind all the time, regardless of the 11 that I see start games. It's poor Sean Dyche in a really difficult position when he first came in. I mean, I think want to end our talking here in terms of Dyche himself, how difficult of a situation it's in. Look, what he did at Burnley, he won't have come in here thinking that, well, this is going to be as bad. Well, maybe he will. Maybe that's the wrong thing to say, because I think he'll have assumed what the situation is. He was a manager out of work. I'm not going as far as saying that, he's happy to accept whatever bit of work's been offered this way. I don't think he's that type of manager. But when he comes into a side that is in such a difficult situation as ours, I remember his first day when he said, when we didn't get a striker, the question was asked to him, are you disappointed and all that? And he said, no, I've got a really good squad to work with, and we've got some really good players here. I mean, I think essentially he's obviously saying that to not make people sort of start asking questions about how poor the club and the board or whatever it was, not for us to sign a striker when he first came in, Paul. But I look at that situation now and I think I think he's got the best of what he could have possibly got out of us. For us to be in the position we're in now and still stay up, given that we're right in the mix with everybody that's in and around us, I look around and I think, do you know what? Regardless of who we got as manager, this is probably the best of what we could have done.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree there, Dave. And when you think as well that we had Arsenal and Brentford both games at Goodison Park with respectively the longest unbeaten runs in the Premier League, and they both left Goodison Park with a 1-0 defeat. I think he's done a fantastic job in getting the team organised, getting the structure in place, and he's done very well in diverting all the hype on not having a striker, not having Calvert-Lewin fit to focus on the rest of the team, on the rest of the players in the team standing up and contributing as well. And I mean, he had a desperate situation in terms of lack of goal scoring options. If you look at the possible starting 11 this coming weekend, only 2 in the current squad have scored more than 2 league goals for us this season, and because you can't get the currency suspended. So yeah. On the other hand, I'm sure Dyche, I agree with you. I don't think he would take any job. I think he quite enjoyed his break from the game as well, and he probably learned a lot from that, from watching other clubs up and down the country. But he's definitely would have done his homework at Everton. By all accounts, he quite impressed in the interview with his strategy and his view on how typical forward. He never makes excuses in press conferences. He never used absent players as a reason for the team not performing. And given what was out there, what was available, in some ways, given the basket case situation at Everton at the moment, with basket case owner and this huge divide between fans and the board, we were lucky that a manager of his quality decided to take on the road, because I'm sure there were lots of people there who thought about him, nah, I'm not going to that club.
I think it's hard to disagree with anything you've said there. And the sort of the mentality has just been all over the place, hasn't it? Certainly for us as fans, but you can only imagine what goes on behind the door there. It's an interesting thought Paul's had there, Pete, about Sean Dyche, the job he's done. And I mean, I'd love to speak to him behind closed doors and ask, have this club been what you'd expect when you came in, or were you basically just told a pack of lies by the likes of Mashiri and Bill Kenwright and everyone else was so critical of? That would not surprise me, I have to say that.
Well, I think, honestly, Dave, touching again on what Paul said, in terms of what Sean Dyche has done, I don't think anyone should underestimate just how tough a job he had coming in. It wasn't like we were on a bad run of form for a couple of months, like we saw under Ronald Koeman or we saw under Marco Silva towards the end. This bad run of form, it was a good 2 seasons worth of bad form, and it goes back to the decision that they took to bring Rafa Benitez in. And after his sort of reasonable start, everything just fell away. And I feel like that, and in terms of performance, in terms of confidence, in terms of where the squad was at, in terms of the imbalance in the squad, I think everything just came to a head. And when Sean Dyche took over, I'll be honest, Dave, after that West Ham defeat, Lampard's last game, I thought we were gone. I couldn't see us getting out of it. I genuinely couldn't. I mean, I was sort of half joking about getting in Marcelo Bielsa just so he could sit on a bucket and kick off every now and again. I was at that stage where I was like, right, we're going to go down. So yeah, we might as well just have a laugh doing it. And but Sean Dyche obviously has come in. And I say that you can't underestimate the job that he's done. The fixtures that he's had as well. It's not like he was coming in like, when we had Wolves at home, Southampton at home, or, those sorts of games where, you'd fancy Sean Dyche to come in and win those games. He was coming in with, Arsenal, Liverpool away, even Leeds at home, those 3 games, and he managed to obviously beat Arsenal. The derby was kind of a bit of a, one of those things.
Typical derby.
Well, yeah, because they didn't really create much. They just managed to get it twice on the counter. You'd probably say, even looking at like the Villa game, we should have been out of sight. We ended up losing 2-0. But again, it comes down to goals. And I think that's one thing, as much as Sean Dyche he's not going to come in and say, oh yeah, I don't need a striker because I do need a striker because these are all rubbish. He's going to come in, especially when he's coming into a squad where the confidence is on the floor anyway. He's not going to come in and say, "Do you know what, right? We're in big trouble because none of these can score goals." But I think he'll be more than aware. He's obviously tried to swap people around, putting Tamari Gray in that central role. It didn't take him long to figure out that Neil Maupay certainly isn't the answer. He's obviously, had to play around with the system a bit. I just think he's beyond reproach in terms of what he's done. I think anyone would struggle. I think if you put Pep Guardiola in charge of that Everton side coming after that West Ham game, I think he'd struggle to better the results that Sean Dyche has got. Because I just think that's just how low we've been, in terms of where the confidence was and in terms of the players that were available. So I think that certainly if Dyche keeps us up, and it's looking more and more positive. I know that we've had a bad result against Manchester United. We've only taken 2 points out the last 3 games, but those 2 points were, in my opinion, unexpected. I think for us to still be out of the bottom 3 after that run of fixtures we've just got through, I think now the next 4 games are the ones that define us. And these are the big tests for Sean Dyche. These are the games where you look at them and go, right, these aren't free hits. These aren't games where, you sort of expected not to get much, so anything else is a bonus. These games are the ones that you look at with the fixtures remaining and think, right, these are the ones we've got to take advantage of. We've got to get points out of. So it's a different kind of pressure, but at the same time, I'm sure Sean Dyche will be looking forward to it. Again, we've just got to try and get every single last ounce of energy out of this squad and try and get us over the line, starting with Saturday, hopefully.
I mean, Paul, what was it? How many year contract does he sign with? A 2-year contract, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
2-year contract. So I had this discussion in the long con that I did with Rob Vieira a few weeks ago, and one of the main discussions that we have called the long con for the reason it was over 2.5 hours long. But we had an extensive discussion on what happens beyond the end of this season, what happens beyond, regardless of where we are. Obviously, a really difficult conversation to have based on, half of that is we could be in the division below, but also it's really early to even talk about that. But we did, and one of the questions Rob asked me was about Sean Dyche, and that if we go down, and I said my answer to this was, I should tell you the question first. He asked me, do you think he deserves to stay on? Say if we go down and if we stay up. And it took a while for me to think about this because any manager that gets relegated, by and large, and I'm just saying this from what we've seen in the history of teams that get relegated, the manager does go. And one of the big exceptions of that was Sean Dyche, when, apart from last season, because he got sacked just before they started going down last season, didn't he? But when they've gone down, they've stuck with Sean Dyche for various reasons. Financials probably one, isn't it? Going out and sacking him and then getting a new manager in, it's going to cost a hell of a lot of money for the side that's just been relegated, regardless of the parachute issues and whatnot. But I answered it and said, well, I think this is a rare occasion in the game where you couldn't possibly blame him if we get relegated. Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
I can't disagree with that at all, Dave. When you factor in, he joined us at a time when he had about 36 hours to try and bring in players that he wanted. None of the players he wanted had actually arrived, so he really was dealt a really poor hand. And I think the situation with Dyche it's different because worst case scenario, if we go down, well, what's the point in sacking Dyche? Because that's more money to be paid out in compensation fees, etc., that can go elsewhere. Given our perilous financial state, I just don't see how we can do that. To me, that makes no sense or has any logic whatsoever. And we have to be realistic. I get some frustration when I see these comments on social media saying, "Oh, we'll just have one season in Championship. Who does the World Cup and come back up?" There's just no guarantee that you're going to get out of the Championship.
But not with the way we ran as well, Paul. You'd have to consider that
exactly. And also, secondly, if you get rid of Dyche, whoever comes in to take his place is going to be an inferior quality manager, because no manager of any standing is going to touch the Everton job in the Championship, given the lack of finances and given the absolute catastrophe that is the leadership from every level of the club. So I think we'd have to put our faith in Sean Dyche to get us back out, and I think we'd have to accept that it might not be a turnaround within 12 months. It could well be 24 months. I hate to be in that situation. But if there's one person who can be absolved of any recriminations about a potential demotion this season, it's Sean Dyche. Because what was the poor guy supposed to do? He's come in, he stopped the losing run. He's made us really hard to beat at home. We got some unexpected victories. And when you look at what he's done, when you think as well, we've given away 3 penalties since he's been here. Those penalties have turned games away from us when we could have got more points as well. So, and you look at the mistakes made by, no, it was really unfortunate for Seamus Coleman at the weekend, but we just seem to have this habit of making crucial mistakes at important times in games that kind of take matches away from us. So, from my point of view, I think Dyche has earned the right to see out his contract. And the other possibilities as well, Dave, let's say he keeps us up. Let's say he keeps up by by a decent safety margin. Well, I'm sure there'll be other clubs circling around thinking, hang on, look what this guy's done with no money there. Maybe we could offer him something better. I don't know.
Do you know what? It's an excellent point, that, because you think of the other 7 or 8 clubs who are taking Palace out of it now. Those 8 clubs there, obviously, 5 of them stay up, and they'll be saying exactly what you've just said. They're thinking that they need to change things over in the summer. And look at Sean Dyche. He's only got 1 year left at Everton, so it won't cost us too much to go and get somebody who has got an excellent record of keeping up, and even if they go down, getting a player, getting a team back to where they want them to be. And I think that's a really interesting point that you've made there. Pete, just on what I said there about Dyche, do you think he has to be completely cut away from the issue that we've had here? Or do you look at it, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, that there are more things he could have done, and obviously I don't want you to look at this and think it's hindsight, but it's pretty hard to answer this question without doing so. But you think of the games that we've lost, the games that we've dropped points in since he's been with us. Do you look at any of them and the way in which he's come about as Everton manager as issues he could have done a lot different from? Or I'm guessing, I'm not putting words in your mouth here, the alternative, which I'm going to ask you, given the situation that club is, which we spoke a lot about earlier in this pod, there's no way he could have got this to where it is now. This is the absolute best where we could have been. And don't regard any sort of luck we could have had, like Paul referred to there, with the penalties and whatnot, and the various issues we've had in certain games where luck's gone against us and dodgy VAR decisions and whatnot. I'm more leaning towards, I don't think he could have done more than what he's done. And that, in that reason for that, in regard to that, we simply have to say, well, this hasn't been his fault. Certainly not that we've got to this situation, but even if we don't stay up, it's not his fault that we didn't.
No, I do think that he's, as I said before, I think he's beyond reproach, to be honest with you. I think anyone who comes into a football club where a week before you had accusations the fans had been putting the CEO into a headlock, you've got, like, do you know what I mean? Like, this is
not about that one. There's too many.
It's the most bizarre situation you could possibly imagine. You've got a childhood supposed blue who's been here all his life, who refuses to turn up for training for his supposed childhood hero, Leighton Baines. You've got all of this going on. He's had no money to spend. Like Paul said, in terms of bringing people in. Our only, like, actual proven goal scorer in the squad has been out for pretty much the entire time he's been here, other than the odd appearance. I just think, no, whatever happens, I think we stand by Sean Dyche. I think, put it this way, if the worst came to the worst and we went down, I don't see anyone who would be a better option to get us out of the Championship. I think any club in the Championship would take Sean Dyche in a heartbeat if they wanted to get out of that league. I think in terms of the Premier League as well, one thing that's impressed me the most about Sean Dyche is that, I was probably harsh on him myself in terms of the type of football that he played. Although, to be fair, towards the end, or certainly the season before he went down, Burnley were playing some really good football. They actually played some really good football. I think he was underestimated as a manager. I also feel that I much prefer the style of football that Sean Dyche plays to, for example, Marco Silva. I know he's a flavour of the month at the moment, Marco Silva, and there is an argument to be said that maybe he could have been given more time. But my lasting memory of Marco Silva was him standing on the touchline like a rabbit in the headlights with his hands in his pockets and his collar up on his suit jacket, looking like he absolutely had no idea what to do. So I don't think we'd ever see Sean Dyche like that. I think that Sean Dyche is tried and tested in a team who are struggling. I think he's tried and tested in terms of getting the best out of players. I think he's tried and tested being in a situation where money doesn't solve everything, which is another massive thing that we need. We need a leader who's able to sort of, get through stormy waters without a rudder, which is what he's kind of having to do at the moment. So I think that Sean Dyche for me is beyond reproach. I think whatever happens at the end of this season, I think he's got to stay. As I say, personally, I think that the type of football he plays in terms of the directness, getting the ball out wide, getting the ball in the box. If we had someone on the end of those crosses, I think that Goodison would be absolutely lit up with the type of football that Sean Dyche plays. I think that passing the ball across the back four 100 times to get you nowhere doesn't suit us. I feel that the crowd responds well to that sort of high intensity, high press, battling for every ball style of football that Sean Dyche does. I personally want to see him. I want to see him here for the long term. I want to see what he can do. I want to see us get through whatever financial difficulties we've got, and I want to see him given a budget, and I want to see what he can do, because I think he's earned his stripes. I think he's earned his stripes in the Premier League. I think when you look at the job he did at Burnley, he got them into Europe. He got Burnley into Europe. I mean, that says it all. And that's no disrespect to Burnley, but given the amount of money that they spent, or lack of money that they spent, given where they came from, given what he did for that football club, I think he's earned the respect, and I think he's shown and proven since he's come in at Everton that he is certainly the man that I would like to see take us forward.
I mean, the other elephant in the room is he could just want to get off.
Yeah, well, that's too. Yeah,
that's always a strong possibility, Dave.
Do you know the amount of nonsense that we've all referred to in regards to the way this football club's been ran for so long now, and the fact that we have 5 or 6 empty seats at Goodison, which paints that picture every single time we have a home game at Goodison, shows you briefly the complete devastation the football club has been entered into by those who were responsible for it. You could easily, if you're a manager, you could sit there and think, right, do you know what? Give me a couple of million quid here. I can't stand this anymore. I've kept you up. I've got, I don't know, let's say Leeds, who've stayed up. They want to get of Javi Gracia. They want to get rid of him. They've asked me to go manage them. I think I'm going to go there because they've got a decent amount of money to spend. Look like they ran a lot better than everybody else. I don't want anything to do with Everton. The way this football club's been ran, that is not beyond the realms of possibility, is it, Paul?
Well, nothing is beyond the realms of possibility as far as Everton is concerned. Every possible worst case, best case scenario is always bound to happen here at Goodison Park. So yeah, and seriously, you can see other teams, if we stay up this season, looking at the job Dyche has done and thinking, come and speak to us, Sean. We can give you a lot more control. We can give you a lot more money. I think I kind of hope that the one thing that might keep that I'm sure Dyche loves about being here. He's of an age where to him Everton are still a big club, which is not for certain younger managers. He's also of an age where he really appreciates what the Everton crowd can bring to performances on match days, and I think he really enjoys the reception, the welcome he gets from the home supporters as well. And I do particularly like the way at the end of matches he doesn't go patrolling around the pitch and waving his fist to the crowd. I like that he comes out, claps his hands and goes off. That's all I want from the manager. I don't want to milk the applause. Do your job, get the points. And
cheap and easy to do that, isn't it, Paul? Managers have been cheap and easy to just simply go and applaud the crowd.
It's so easy. I totally agree, Dave. And I think I totally agree with what Pete said there before. That the guy's beyond reproach. And for once, you would like to see, it would never happen with Everton, but you just can't hope. Surely there's some kind of long-term thinking here that they're going to tie Dyche down to maybe an extension of this deal and work with him rather than panicking at the first sign of a run of bad results and getting rid of him. Give him the time to build the team that he wants, because we're all sick of being stuck in the bottom half of the table. We've got a talented manager here who gets the best out of players. Let's keep him. And let's see if we can start to move forward rather than consistently looking over our shoulders at the Championship.
Pete, final comment?
Yeah. Again, we've, going to sound like Sean Dyche here. We've got to take it game by game. take it game by game, take it game by game. But yeah, again, we obviously assess it at the end of the season. Let's hope that Sean Dyche can continue the good work that he's doing. I'm more confident now after the last 3 games, even with that United result. I'm as confident as I've been about staying in the league so far this season, which is dangerous, by the way.
Sorry to interrupt you both there, lads. But the other thing as well that we didn't really throw into the mix here, this cauldron that we're just throwing a load of different things up and down with this football club's all about at the moment. But you look at that financial situation. I'm not talking about the one from the independent panel that's going to give us whatever it is that it's going to be of being guilty of financial breaches and whatnot. But you look ahead, and again, it's difficult to do, but stay up. Well, even if we go down, it's probably the same scenario, really. We're not able to spend money, given the situation. I would presume we're not able to spend money until we get a decision of why we've been in this financial issue. We've not been able to spend money in January, or a certain amount of money. We've all sat there and banged on about selling Anthony Gordon, selling Richarlison. We haven't really used all of that yet. Financially, that's up in the air. We don't know if we're able to do that. I mean, you look at that and you think, well, why would I still hang around at Everton if I can't even get any money to spend, given the fact I've taken them over and just about kept them up? That's with a side that's going to be against most clubs in the league who are going to be able to have money to spend and make their teams and squads better by and large.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, Dave. I'm sure that Sean Dyche is seeking reassurances about the financial state of the club and what.
Could he trust them? No, could he trust them?
well,
I'd look outside. If Farhad Mashiri told me it was raining outside, I'd go and look.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but Dyche is no mug, isn't he? He would know when things are what they should be. So I'm convinced that he will want to be. He will want to be convinced that there's a way forward for Everton. Yeah, he won't reassurances, and he won't commit his future to the club without that. And as you and Pete have been kind of indicating there, there'll be other clubs circling around Dyche should we stay up. And so it's so important that the club gets its act together. And if we are in a situation where financially we can't compete, one thing Sean Dyche has shown during his time at Burnley is he doesn't always need the big money side. And let's face it, our record of signing big money players hasn't worked out particularly well over the years, has it? So maybe someone who can make the best of what we got with a few inspired additions to the team, that could be possibly the way forward. And combine that with bringing some of the younger players through, because I just get so frustrated with the lack of opportunity for younger players in the Everton team.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. Academy-wise as well, that's something else that needs to be severely looked at. All we ever seem to hear from the club itself are these sound bites, aren't they? Oh, the academy's in really good place, and various players, the under-18s have won a game 4-0, something along those lines. But just to finish up, guys, looking back at this game at the weekend. Well, no, firstly, Paul, I ask you this every single time, and I do apologise, but I still need to hear, what's your points total that keeps us up?
34.
34 points still. He says 34 points still.
It might be on goal difference, but I think that's enough.
I'm going to take you out the nicest meal ever if we stay up on 34 points, Paul, honestly. That's not because I completely doubt that it's going to happen. I just love it if it actually happens that way, do you know what I mean? Pete, give us your little take on this. What are you thinking points wise keeps us up?
I keep saying 36, but yeah, 34 might do it. It's so. I kind of get to the point where I start thinking, 3 more wins that'll do. Maybe 9 more points that'll do us. But then,
how easy does that sound, though, Peter? I keep looking at these bloody fixtures. I'm thinking 3 wins to get us to 36. That's going to keep us up. And I think, how hard is it to get 3 wins? Well, then I look at the table and think, well, we've had 6 in 30 games.
yeah, exactly. But I think there or thereabouts will do it. There's so many teams in it. That's the thing. It's the fact that we're still in and amongst so many teams. I mean, not every result's going to go our way, and we need to make sure that we keep our keep cool heads when some results don't go our way. Last weekend, was it last weekend or the weekend before, where pretty much every result seemed to go against
midweek, wasn't it? The midweek,
the midweek, yeah. And it was like, well, but then we have other days where everything goes for us. So it's such a topsy-turvy season. We just got to concentrate on our own, on ourselves, try and get through these games. I keep saying this, by the way, and I'm gonna nail me. What's the phrase?
Nail the colours to the mast.
That's the one. Nail me colours to the mast. Someone's due an absolute pasting off us at some point.
Oh, come on now. You're going too far.
I'm telling you, someone at some point. I mean, it might be Bournemouth on the last game of the season when we're already confirmed relegated, but someone's due a pasting off us, and I'm going to nail me colours to the mast and say Fulham on Saturday. I think we'll either get beat 1-0 or we'll win 4-0. I'm going for the latter.
Well, you think that's bad, mate? I've got my missus saying she's going to do an Everton double with the winner she's going to put on for the Grand National. Definitely might be moving into a man if that happens.
Two ponies.
Finally, just give us your score prediction. Just the goal scorers, not the goal scorers, just the actual score that it's going to finish on at Goodison.
I'm telling you, I've said we'll get beat 1-0 or we win 4-0. I'm going to go 4-0.
You've got to pick one. Yeah, 4-0. Go on, Paul.
2-0, and Calvert-Lewin comes off the bench to get the decisive second goal.
That'd be lovely end to the weekend, lovely afternoon, and hope you all go and win your 50 pence each way that you've got on the Grand National as well, as my missus has probably put on. Anyway, thanks so much for listening to the weekly here, on the Blue Room subscription as well. We've got bagfuls to come, including tomorrow, when I'm going to be talking to a good friend of mine, Sammy James, who's a massive Fulham journalist and podcaster down there in London, and get the inside on what's going on with Marco Silva down there. I'm sure it's going to be riveting to hear that he's doing much better than he did at us. And we'll be back for post-match on Saturday as soon as the game finishes. As always, we're the fastest to get it out there for you. Thanks for listening as you always do, and we really appreciate your support. Up the Toffees.